Ho, 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 happy holidays. Hola, hello, hi, bienvenido, and welcome back, or welcome to Entrepreneurial Thinkers. This, the holiday special episode. If you're a member of our community, you know that this is the show where I get to have weekly conversations with the best and brightest entrepreneurial thinkers across all sectors and segments of society as we try to come together to leave this world a little bit better place than we found it. And in that spirit, I thought there's no better time to reflect upon the world we live in and are we leaving it a better place than we found it than the end of the year, this crazy holiday crush period. It's that time of the year now when we've got Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Boxing Day, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, and probably a few religious holidays that I've missed, all coming at us fast and furious now. And so we just wanted to pause as our team to you and just wish you all the love and peace possible, no matter which holiday you and your family celebrate. And we're going to do that by sharing with you a little bit of a look back at 2024 and then some hopefully inspirational and informational things to share with you as you go forward into 2025. So first off, let me just say again, kind of frame up the year from my point of view. 2024 was a year of immense change, opportunity, challenges, love, loss, and laughs for all of us. As we close out this year and we look forward to next year, we thought we'd create a special episode made just for you. Think of this as our gift to you, handpicked with love and intention, and hopefully flavored with a dash of valuable information and insight from Deanna, Anna Paula, and myself. So we're going to do things a little bit differently than we would do in a normal episode. And I'm going to share with you some guest wisdom and experience. I'm going to share with you some of my own insights and experiences that we now regularly offer to you via another podcast show that we do on a weekly basis. And then we're going to share with you a top 5 list of books that have inspired me throughout the course of this last year in hopes that all of this together will leave you a little bit inspired, a little bit educated, and much more empowered as you head forward into your 2025. As you know, our thesis here at Entrepreneurial Thinkers, as our recent guest and friend here in Los Angeles, Andy Wilson, just reminded us, is that entrepreneurial thinking is absolutely essential to making progress as a society. Over the course of this year and nearly 50 episodes that we shared here in this feed, and over 140 plus episodes over the last 4 years, our guests have done an incredible job of illustrating just how true that sentiment that Andy shared is through their own stories and their own experiences. They've shown us every week that through everyone's journey, which is unique, there are a handful of consistent key attributes to any life or business career well lived. And so what we thought we'd do is that we'd share some of those clips of our guests in their own words, reminding us of these core principles of becoming an entrepreneurial thinker. We've centered this montage around 4 big important themes that we believe are essential to being an entrepreneurial thinker and peppered it with some clips that we're confident you're going to absolutely enjoy as much as we did making them. The first of these 4 themes is community, and it's vital importance to everything that happens in an entrepreneurial thinking life. The second is purpose, or finding or having your why. The third is relationships. And as you know me, relationships is the key to it all. Right? The fourth, and it may be the thing that wraps this all together, is curiosity and creativity. So now I'm going to share with you a bunch of amazing clips. And first, let's hear from a few of our alumni on why community is absolutely important in every entrepreneurial journey.
I think that now relationships are also the base of the way that people are doing businesses, mainly since a lot of companies started being created on top of communities, right? We know of a lot of businesses that now have started by building communities first and then launch their product, their service, or whatever they're doing once they have this audience or this community. So I think now more than ever, relationships, community building ecosystems are super important. And I would actually even say it's in that order, right? You start building relationships, right? Then those relationships, those multiple relationships that have something in common can create a community. And then in order for that community to go somewhere, right? In order for that community to have some legs, then you have to turn it into an ecosystem.
Find the right peer community, right? Because there is, again, with entrepreneurship, I think a lot of people are romanticizing with the fact of becoming an entrepreneur. And so they go to all of the meetups and all of the networkings, and sometimes only to find out that they're not your right community. So you have to be intentional about making sure that you're finding the right type of community that's going to be supportive to you. You also need to figure out, what are you looking for? Are you looking for a community of peers to support you? Or are you looking for a community of peers in the care economy and healthcare and finance to help you your networks so that you can access funds or fundraising? So you need to take the time, first of all, before you join any peer communities, to say, what do I want and why do I want it? And then go find those communities.
Really focus on like community and who you're selling to. I think like that's the main component about starting a brand, because it gives you a lot of information, right? It gives you what's the lifestyle, what kind of clothes do they wear, what's their price point that they could afford. And then also it gives you like in terms of marketing, like how are you going to target this customer? So I think like that's like the key component before starting a brand. Like
build community, build and talk to your community.
Yeah, build community, because once you've built a community, you actually have someone to sell to. It's easier, you know, and then it's a community that understands you and understands like where you came from and what's the purpose of your brand. So I want to say like that's one of the keys.
Second, many of our amazing guests also reminded us that community, products, or even a lot of capital aren't necessarily important unless you found your why, or unless you have found your purposefulness in your pursuits. So let's hear a few stories about why finding your why and finding your purpose is so critical.
So start being more curious about what you're doing and the why behind it. In any role that you're in, unless you are like the CEO who's created the why, and even then they sometimes forget, get back to like, what is the why, but also where are we going? And having that focus in every single thing that you do, where are we going? So here's where I am right now. Here's where I want to be. And then everything becomes focused on how do I bridge that gap? And so personally with your own like career path individually, but also your organization. And that's how you're going to bring so much value. And then other people will see that. They'll start to see that. So get that alignment around like, where are we going? So it's so easy to get caught in the trap of like, I'm just working, I'm just doing like whatever task is on my desk. That's what I'm doing. I'm responding to this email. It's so easy to get caught up in that. But take a step back. I always tell people like set aside time for ideation. Start just like literal block time in your calendar just to think, you know, start thinking.
We've spent, hours upon hours as a team actually working on what's going to be our thesis, why we're going to focus on this, why the world needs it, and why, also the question we get all the time, why does the world need another VC fund? Well, I would love for you to get out there and find me a VC fund that looks like us, is as diverse as us, right? Has experience that we're bringing to the table, and like our conversation, like we're thinking locally and globally. I've heard that on several people, on the guests who've shown up, and it matters, right? And so the alumni, we're traveling around the world. I'm in India today. We were in the Middle East recently, and guess what? Those same individuals and founders, they're doing the same thing that we're doing, and that's why we love it, because they are international.
As you've said,
my investment thesis is often: are you making something that's going to make the lives of as many people as possible better? Yes, no. Are you working in an economy or a market that affects a lot of people? And so I think similarly, the reason why I want to uplift more underrepresented folks, because that's like a better view of who the world is.
The biggest skills are presence, compassion, adaptability, resilience. If you have those, you show up with vulnerability and openness and inclusivity, which is not the way of the old leadership paradigm. You build cultures that are built on wholeness rather than hustle, which is not the old paradigm that you and I were brought up on. And you are optimizing for things like presence and purpose over productivity, because what we learn and what research tells us is if you focus on presence and purpose, you will reach the productivity and the result that you want. So I think we're in a big shift in what our focus is, but it's really sort of like a coming home to leadership is the way I look at it.
Thirdly, playing on these kind of related themes of community and purpose, a number of other guests that we visited with over the last year talked with us about the importance of building great relationships. They talked about how to do so. They talked about how meaningful that can be in your business. And sometimes they talked about even how those work relationships can result in great lifelong friendships. So let's go ahead and listen.
Professional sales is about understanding the other person more than you understand yourself. It's about understanding who they are. If I spend an hour, I get passionate about this, but if I spend an hour talking about me, we go for a drink and I spend an hour talking about me, what do you think? I let you permeate those words. If I spend an hour talking about you, who are you? Tell me about you. Tell me about your life. How does that make you?
You're literally the greatest guy ever. We're going to be friends forever.
Exactly. So sales is everything. It's, think of it as a way of communicating. It's about understanding their point of view before understanding your own. And in sales, you're marrying, their problem to your solution, and you can only find that out by asking questions and listening to their answers.
I think for me, it's always about the human and the person. And I think oftentimes when we're in school, we're in middle school or in high school, and I'm thinking of there was no agenda to the friendship. We're friends for the sake of being friends. But something happens when people leave school and then hop into the professional world, that now they're starting to think about friendships as this agenda-based initiative.
Right. It's a transaction, right?
It's a transaction. How can I get to this person so I can get this, and then I can that? I don't think about any of that stuff. I mean, yes, there are some things you think about, is this someone I want to emulate, someone I want to be like? For me, it's more it's do I want to be like that person 10, 20 years from now? Right. Would I be proud of myself?
Yeah.
And if the answer is yes, I think it's probably a good person to connect with.
Yeah.
So for me, again, the first part of that answer is always about the person, getting to know
about the human.
I always say getting to know people for who they are, not what they're getting paid to be. If someone is the CEO of X, they are getting paid to be the CEO of X, but they're not getting paid to be themselves, right? And I think you have to get to know people. I think second, there is something to be said about the ability to read the room and the ability to read people, and knowing what to ask, when to ask it, knowing someone's personality, knowing what makes them happy, what makes them sad, what makes them mad, and I think figuring that out, I think a question I always ask people sometimes, what breaks your heart? And you get to really understand what are the things in the world that bother these people, and what are their motivations, what are the problems they want to solve, and things like that.
And I was put in a situation where I have to lean on my neighbors and my relationships and my friends, right? And so that kind of is the core of how I start my company, is first learning my weaknesses. I know I don't know the culture. I don't know the, whether it's political climate or culture or whatever that's going on that needs to sustain your life. I need to lean on my community to support me. Hence the reason why my company right now starts with quality, ends with community, because I have to.
Right. And finally, as I said, sort of kind of wrapping all of this up inside of a package of curiosity and creativity. We've had so many guests who are so fundamentally creative and are so deeply curious that it was hard to pick only a few clips to share, but here we are. And so let me go ahead and share some of who we think are some of the best clips around this theme.
Just totally encourage people to be curious, stay curious about where you are and how the world works, because the more curious you are about how the world works and the more you understand it, the better you can create that kind of storytelling moment and create and connect that authentically, where it doesn't feel like a trend. You're not hopping onto a conversation that you've never been a part of.
So the difference between art and creativity, if art is grandfather, creativity is one of the grandchildren.
All right.
So creativity wherever you go. because creativity is that idea that we could approach a problem from 4 or 5 different dimensions. And that's where things become unlimited and like a little bit beyond sometimes like where we want to stop and do things in the business world. Business always comes down to it. I get very frustrated when I hear people say the goal of every business is to make money. And I'm like, that's short-sighted, that's capitalism, that's keep it simple, stupid. Not the full saying, which is keep it simple but nothing less. Keep it simple, nothing less. So if we have this idea of like creativity wherever we go, we're no longer approaching things as binary. We make money or we don't. There are a multiverse of madness of solutions that we should be measuring in terms of KPIs. How did people feel? Who felt included? Who are the folks that were in the room to help make the decision? Who are the authors of this story?
It's also very valuable to have all the right questions. So having that sort of idea of what are we not asking? What are we not thinking about? Like, what are we not considering? What's another way? Having those questions and having that curiosity, I think has been really key for me in a lot of areas.
Wow. I mean, how amazing are these people that I get to sit down and have conversations with on a weekly basis? If those clips don't inspire you to go back and re-listen to some of our episodes from 2024, as I do often, by the way, I don't know what will. I am so eternally grateful for all these people that you saw and for all the guests that we didn't feature here in this section, because they have provided us with an essential, timeless library of insights and wisdom that we get to carry in our backpack every day as we go out and try to become our best entrepreneurial thinkers on a daily basis. So, beyond our incredible guest, as I told you, I also wanted to share some perspective and some feelings from my own journey. As you know, if you've been following along this last year, I've been on a significant journey of reinvention and growth. And so we thought we would share some more of that here with you. One of those outcomes of my own curiosity was that Deanna and I realized at some point early in the year that beyond my weekly conversations with our guests, I simply had a lot more to say. So in an instance of experimentation and our own creativity, and kind of with a little bit of a nothing to lose attitude, we created a new weekly show on our YouTube channel called Stoppage Time with Uncle Rob. It's a very different format. It's one where I speak directly to camera and directly to you for 10 to 15 minutes each Friday afternoon. Sort of a opportunity to clear my mind and to share my thoughts about the world and how I experienced it that week before we go into our weekend. And in a little fun twist, we called it Stoppage Time because I love soccer, or football as many of us call it. And in every match, if you are a soccer or football fan, you know that there's this little bit of extra time that the referees add between the end of regulation time and the final whistle when the match actually ends. And I liken that in a lot of ways to kind of that time between the end of our week, our working week, and our weekend. And it's kind of a moment for a more unfiltered and personal meeting. And so in the spirit of this year and this holiday gift to you, we're going to share now some of our fondest takeaways from this year's 35 plus episodes of Stoppage Time with me. I'm going to share some perspective about my own why and why it's so important to find yours. I'm going to share one of the lessons that has driven a lot of what we have talked about with these entrepreneurial thinking guests this year. My mom's core life advice around leaving every place a little bit better than we found it. And then finally, I'm going to share my thoughts in 2 topics, conversations and patience, a few stories that I shared over the course of the year. So hopefully you enjoy.
You have to understand your why in life, right? And for those of us that find it, I'm about to be 56 years old, and I'm in the midst of another reinvention because I absolutely 1000% believe that building the Storytellers Company and expanding upon the content that we're creating already is literally my purpose. And it is what I'm supposed to be doing. It's the greatest use of my time and talents. I said it to Lauren today. It's really simple. My mom used to tell us that leave every room that you enter a little bit better than you found it. And more generally, leave the world a little bit better place than you found it when you entered. And so that's all I'm really trying to do.
We just don't talk to each other enough anymore. Like, we don't genuinely, slowly, patiently talk and listen to one another anymore. We shout at each other, right? Via social media, online, from a distance, et cetera, et cetera. Second thing, it's much harder to attack or hate someone that you're having a conversation with. I have lots of people in my life that I have pretty strong disagreements with, and where there are boundaries over the things that we agree or disagree on, and yet I don't hate those people. I might not always understand them, and I might have vehement disagreement over their particular points of view about some issues, but I can't hate them because I can empathize with them. I can understand that we have different points of view. I can even explore through conversation with them those different points of view in an attempt to understand them better, not necessarily in an attempt to change their minds, right? But in an attempt to help understand them so that my mind can interact with their mind, right? And then the third big takeaway is that whether it's our interpersonal relationships, our business relationships, engaging in conversation is not just like a better way to understand others, but it's really a better way to understand ourselves. We're in this age of kind of hyper oversimplification driven by clips and hacks and speed everything, right? In the entrepreneurship world, it's famous in the last 10 or 15 years for like speed mentoring and speed founder relationships and speed investors. And it's just all bullshit, because the most important and most sustainable things that we have in our lives and in our businesses and in the macro of our societies are the things that take time, are the long form things. Well, now that you've heard some more from me, and hopefully you enjoyed the format that show is delivered in, and if you aren't a regular viewer or listener of that show, I hope personally that you would take the time to give us a chance. And if you're a YouTube viewer of our Entrepreneurial Thinkers show on a regular basis, you can find our Stoppage Time shows right buried inside that same Entrepreneurial Thinkers feed channel on YouTube. So I promised you I wanted to share my thoughts, and I surely did. I look forward to sharing thoughts with you on a weekly basis going forward. That experience of the Stoppage Time show, selfishly for me, was exceptionally cathartic. It allowed me to focus a place where I knew each week I was going to have an opportunity to talk directly with you outside the confines of a scripted guest interview show. And it really helped me to both gain perspective and deeper gratitude for the life that I live, but also just kind of frame up a lot of the experiences that many of us share and go through, either as fellow entrepreneurs or entrepreneurial thinkers, or just as kind of human beings and citizens of the world. So I hope you really enjoy that. But that's not the only gift of knowledge that I promised we were going to share with you. I want to share with you now our top 5 most impactful books list. These are the books that sparked some bit of inspiration in me, or they provided me some important context on humanity. And fundamentally, this list of books and all the books, podcasts, or movies that we recommended over the course of this year's shows, I believe every one of us needs to have a firm understanding of 3 things. And these books help me to understand these 3 things better. So what are the 3 things that I think all of us need to have a better understanding of on a daily basis? 1, I think we need to understand our history, or your history. You need to know how we got here. 2, we need to understand one another and how to communicate with one another. Not just better, but just how to communicate with one another. We need to be more aware of our own humanity. We need to better understand and connect with our neighbors, our competitors, our investors, and our allies. And 3, we need to be more open-minded and curious. We can stay committed to our principles, but we have to be flexible in our ideology. And to me, these 5 books that we recommended through the course of the year focus on these elements in a really, really sharp, concise way. So I share with you our top 5 book list for 2024. 1, Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind by author Yuval Noah Harari. 2, A More Beautiful Question by author Warren Berger. 3, Talking to Strangers, What We Should Know About the People We Don't Know by author Malcolm Gladwell. 4, A Curious Mind by Brian Grazer. 5, and finally, Think Again, The Power of Knowing What You Don't Know by author Adam Grant. These books were meaningful in my life. These books helped shape perspective during times of adversity. These books gave me solace during times of struggle. And these books fed my strengths and encouraged me to lean more deeply into that which makes me me. So I can only hope that if you haven't read these books already on your own time, that you find time to read these books and that they can help you chart that type of direction forward in your life in 2025. And finally, to close this out, I just want to say thank you. I'm so deeply grateful for every single one of you who has ever listened to or watched any of our episodes. When we had 3 listeners back in the day, or now when we have hundreds of listeners on an occasional episode, we always think of you, our community, as if you were sitting in our living room, listening intently to every conversation. And we'll never lose sight of that intimate and personal connection with you, no matter how we grow. And make no mistake, we have an ambition and aspirations to grow. We're driven by the desire to grow because we know the impact that our shows and our conversations have had on the people that do listen, who are members of our community already. And we simply want to share that opportunity and that energy with as many people as possible. Our team, myself, Deanna, and Paula, are grateful for every one of our guests, who we call alumni because they are so much more connected to our purpose and our mission than just any transactional one-time guest might be to some other show. And we also are deeply, deeply grateful and very excited to welcome and say thank you to each of our new and many of our soon-to-be sponsors. We opened up sponsorship opportunities inside of our community just these last few months of 2024, and it's been both exciting and gratifying, as well as transformational to our lives and our business. Because fundamentally, the sponsors that are coming on board now are literally enabling me and our team to focus on this full time so that we can curate and create more positive human stories for you in the years to come. I always say to our team, and I say it to friends that are willing to listen to me, we're making conversational art every week. And when I close my eyes, that's literally how I envision what we're doing. We're creating conversational art. And our job is simply to make that art and then put it out into the world for you all to experience in whatever ways you do, whenever you do. But I want to tell you to be certain, you consuming the art that we work so hard to create has forever changed my life, and it will forever change our lives collectively. These conversations ultimately are about 2 people, our guests and you. We get to, not have to, we get to do this work, and we're the luckiest people ever because we get to learn from, be inspired by, and amplify our incredible community of guests while sharing those conversations with you so that you can do the same. It's a virtuous cycle of life, if you'd like to think about it that way, and we're deeply, deeply thankful to each of you. Without you listening, liking, following, sharing with your friends, or commenting on our social posts, our work lacks meaning and sustainability. But in every single comment or share or repost that you make of these conversational art pieces, you energize us to want to do even more. So again, I say thank you. When we set out this year to expand the thesis of our show, I knew selfishly that I wanted to talk about more things in life than just startups and investors. But I also knew from my 35 years of experience as an entrepreneur and a mentor that the same core traits that drive entrepreneurs and investors drive other leaders across our societies. And I believed with all my heart that if we could foster those sorts of wider conversations at the intersection of entrepreneurship and broader society, that we'd uncover a whole new community of leaders. I've come to call you, entrepreneurial thinkers. And that maybe, just maybe, if we engaged in smart, thoughtful, long-form conversations with enough of these people, and if we told their stories in a positive, honest, but optimistic and hopeful light, that maybe we could collectively make a dent in this big, messy world we play in. And in the end, what we learned hundreds of times over is that entrepreneurial thinking isn't just for building businesses. It's about building better lives and better communities. It is, in fact, as my mom has always told me, about leaving every room or our world a little bit better than we found it. I love you all. I wish you a joyous, peaceful, and happy holidays, no matter where you and your family and your colleagues are. And we're going to see you right back here on all our regular channels and platforms in January for another full year of shows, plus many more exciting conversations in many more exciting places and formats in 2025. Thank you, and happy holidays.